Welcome to another SummitCast show. Today, we're going to be talking about Dutch farmers versus the Great Reset. Welcome to the show. Today, we have a special guest with us, Piet van Straaten, who lives in Holland, and he's going to be talking to us about the Dutch farmer protests over there. So, Piet, welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Peter.
So, Piet, tell us a little bit about yourself and where you live and what are you seeing around where you live?
I am living indeed in Holland, in Amersfoort, so that's actually in the center of the country. And what I see around me is that it has a little bit two faces, I would say, this protest. On the one hand, it is being covered by the media. And indeed, the farmers are really occupying or blocking highways. So that's really big news. And also, I think a lot of people really have a problem, at least notice that. And also they gather and really they protest and let themselves heard that they don't agree with the government policies. And on the other hand, if I'm at my workplace, then I don't hear a lot about it. So it is there. There is I think quite a big group, and at least most of the farmers, as far as I know, are really fed up with government policies about the nitrogen policy specifically. And on the other end, there is a big group of people that are just doing their own thing and are not really taking a side or are really busy with it, with this topic.
Okay. I'm seeing headlines like tractors blocking 700 miles of highways in Holland and things like that. So are you seeing that? And is it affecting people's daily lives in Holland?
Yeah, it does. They had a few times that they indeed were really blocking all the highways, and there were big traffic jams. And indeed, of course, the main ones, the main highways were occupied, and people were not able to travel, or at least were in a traffic jam for a few hours. So that was really a big issue last weeks or even months, maybe. Yeah.
For those people in other countries who don't know, tell us a little bit about what they're protesting about and what's the background to it.
Yeah, actually, they already started in 2019. So it is something that is already playing for quite some years. And I'm not sure how that is in the United States, but here in Holland, we have quite a strict policies already for farmers. So not only about nitrogen, but about all other things to really try to avoid that the farming itself, that it will impact the surrounding area. So in itself, that you have kind of policies around it, I think that is normal and good to have, so that people abide with certain rules. But just quite recently, actually, when we had an elections at the beginning of this year, so there was formed a new government, and this new government was very interesting because it is formed we have a multiple party system here, so we don't have two parties like you have, but a lot of parties that can participate. And the government was formed with, I think, three parties, or even four actually. And one of them is a kind of right-wing party, that is the biggest one. Then you have a kind of liberal party. And that's, they really are about open borders, about all those things, transgenderism, about all those agenda points that at least I'm not really in favor of. And then you have two Christic parties, and they're from origin, they really are closely aligned with farmer policy. So they were always on the hand of the farmers. So when they were starting this government, you would say, okay, you have a small party that is really left-wing oriented. Then you have a right-wing oriented, the biggest one, and two Christic parties. And you would say, okay, they probably would support the farmers, or at least their interests. And now all of a sudden you see that they really follow the agenda of the left-wing party. So everybody is caught by surprise. So even members of the right wing party are really saying, what's happening here? We don't recognize our own party anymore. What kind of policy are they following? So that's really big news, and that is really, I think, that started this new crisis or news upheaval within the farmers and all those protests. And they now are trying to push a policy that's about nitrogen, and that it needs to be lowered because according to certain research, it would influence national parks. And that's actually debatable, but at least that is what the government is saying. And they say, okay, we need to follow this direction. This directive is also coming from Brussels, so from the EU. So we need to abide with that. And for that reason, the farmers need to cut down their livestock about 50% or even in some cases. And as you probably can understand with all the economics that you have, is that you need to have a large scale farm, because otherwise it's not profitable. So if they scale down with 50%, they cannot really make a living. So they need to sell it. And the government is generating a lot of, not sure generating, but at least has a lot of money that they want to buy out the farmers. And they say, but we're living here for generations and for hundreds of years with this within our own family, this land. And we're not just going to sell out or being sold out. We really want to stay here and we want to be a farmer. We're not a farmer because we want to become a farmer. We are farmers. So really they identify with that profession. So that starts off all those protests.
I mean, it seems very strange. I mean, that suddenly this nitrogen, limits. I mean, it's not about global warming, is it? Is it like protecting like wetlands or rivers?
Yeah, exactly. That's the narrative, at least, that's being put upon the people. At least that is what the government is giving that narrative. Is that there is certain research done, and indeed they say that the wetlands around farmland is being affected negatively, and for that reason, we should cut down in nitrogen. So that's what they said. That's the narrative, but it is very interesting if you compare it. So one of the interviews that I also saw on the television or the TV was that they said, okay, but I'm living near the border of Belgium, and I think we have the same cows in the Netherlands than we have in Belgium, but they don't have to cut down in their nitrogen. So how can you explain that? Then you get a whole long story, but this is really what the people are getting upset about. It's like it seems like only the Netherlands is really suffering with these policies.
Yeah, and maybe that's the trial run to see if it works, and then if people will put up with it at Holland, they'll do it in other places as well, maybe.
Yeah, it feels a bit that way, and now all of a sudden you see the whole focus on nitrogen only in the Netherlands. So it feels a bit like this is a kind of tryout. It's really peculiar.
Yeah, and of course, I mean, the cows aren't putting out any more nitrogen this year than they have been for the last 100 years, probably, right?
You would not say, although we do have to say that the stocks are bigger. So there are maybe in general, or there are more cows. That could very well be the issue, or at least the case. Yeah.
I imagine is there a strong culture of farming in Holland? That's kind of what I imagine, these Dutch farms everywhere, and that. So is this that big of a political issue for the majority of Dutch people that they kind of have these farming roots?
Yeah, we do have a big culture around farming. That's absolutely true. We have a university that's also very renowned around the world about farming, about agriculture. So we really have a high standard. And I believe that although we are a very small country, we are the sixth country regarding export figures. So the sixth on the list. So that's in itself, of course, quite high for that small of a country. So we do have a history in that. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that strikes you is, we're looking at supply chain disruptions, and problems in actually food supply in many areas. I mean, the Russia-Ukraine conflict is just one of them. You also have, all the supply chain things. and introducing these measures to radically reduce the food output in Holland at the time when we're looking at the possibility of global famine. It just seems like, you know, either I don't know, really poor planning or else good planning if your agenda is to, you know, reduce the population through famine.
Yeah. Yeah, I really agree on that. That seems like, why at this point, why not wait? Because indeed, a lot of grain is coming for Ukraine that is actually not coming in now. So although we don't have a big grain agriculture, but still, indeed, I agree about it. And what I don't know all the details about it, but what I also understood is that the World Economic Forum is also starting a quite advanced food hub in the Netherlands. So one of the, and that's from the alternative media, so I cannot say that it is true, but at least it is something that is circling around, is that they say, okay, yeah, they want to reduce indeed the agriculture, and they want to advance the food hub and really have a different kind of food that they want the people to eat. So and that's in, yeah, if you look at from that the food hub, that's actually true. There is indeed, that was also in the news, there is a food hub, and it's supposed to be very advanced with all the newest technologies, and I don't know what technologies, but yeah, maybe you can think about it, what it would be really about. But it is indeed, it seems like some things are falling together on that perspective. And what I also heard is that they bought farmland already from some farmers, and they started an asylum centrum over there, so that refugees could stay in that farm. So okay, so that's a strange things kind of happening.
Oh, very strange. Yeah, never let a good crisis go to waste, eh?
I would think so. Yeah, that is indeed the case.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that's been coming out of the World Economic Forum and the environmental movement in general is the idea that we have to cut down greenhouse gases. We have to stop people eating meat and stop having cows, and, you know, raise insects and eat insects instead. You know.
Yeah. Yeah.
So is a lot of the agriculture in Holland around dairy products, is that the issue, or is it meat, or what?
Both. Indeed, the farmers themselves, indeed, a lot of dairy and meat. Yeah, both. Yeah.
Are they actually like doing bug farms in Holland?
No. I don't know. It is something indeed in alternative news that you hear about it, that they are working on it. I do know indeed with the famous university I mentioned previously, is that they are sponsored by the World Economic Forum, and that they are looking to alternative feeding methods, of how you want to call it. And yeah, if you think about it, then of course you come to things like, indeed, do they want to I'm not sure how do you say that, kweken in English.
Crickets, you mean?
Yeah, crickets, but then at least I want to grow it in greenhouses, like meat in greenhouses, or how do you say it? I'm not sure in the right English words for it.
But lab-grown meat.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I mean. So you hear about those things that they want to do it in that way, and that could make sense, of course, if you want to buy out the farmers. You want to reuse their land for refugees camps and this kind of things, and indeed you want to push an agenda for alternative feeding methods. Then things fall together.
Agenda. I mean, because when you look at the numbers behind even like Beyond Meat or these other alternative products to they have worse CO2 output, you know. So even if you're saying, okay, we're doing this because of climate change, we're doing this because of whatever, it can only be for an agenda, because when you actually look at the hard facts, it produces more CO2. It's worse for the environment. These mega crops of corn and soy on our land are terrible for the environment, and you know, it seems like the Holland method of milk and dairy production and meat is actually better for the land than a lot of these alternative products would be. and yet they're still pushing them.
Yeah. Also that biofuel, that's also I think is also actually notorious that in the end it costs more CO2 or more wood than it will save you CO2. Yeah.
Yeah, something that you see in America, and maybe it's behind this too, is it's an effort to drive the small independent farmers out of business and kind of consolidate agriculture in large corporations.
Yeah, that's also what I hear sometimes, that they want to create a certain dependency indeed. And if people can grow their own food, then of course, they're not depending on the state or on whoever is controlling the food supply. Yeah. Yeah,
so whether that's a conscious thing, I mean, the alternative press is talking about that's a conscious thing to, control the world food supply with a very small number of corporations. And so you can control people by controlling food. Whether that's it, whether that's conscious, whether that's kind of a subconscious thing, or whether people in positions of power just look for, without even being aware of it, looking for ways to expand their power and control, because they have a psychological need for that. It's really hard to figure out what's going on, but it could be all of these things,
Yeah, I agree. I think it is not all black and white. Probably indeed there is some things that are kind of by accident happening, or a byproduct for something. But in itself, that what I said earlier, that the government, the new government that it is formed, they really are pushing a left agenda, and that's not only with the nitrogen policies, but it is also with a lot of refugees that are really flooding our country. It's about also the digital ID that they are really pushing. Like it seems like we're a little bit in a post-COVID time living, but on the background they're really working on those issues and really pushing that agenda. And that's something that in itself, of course, is worrisome, I would say. Yeah.
So how did a right-wing majority government end up pushing these things? That doesn't really make any sense, does it?
No, it really doesn't make any sense, because they were the biggest party of the country after the election. So that's of course the reason also why they formed the government. And it was really a twist, like, or they changed their they had a certain promise, of course, when they started the elections, and now they're really not fulfilling it. So what you also see in the polls is that they really dropped down, and a lot of alternatives parties that also are right wing but were not so popular before the elections are really now even maybe bigger than his right wing party. So that's indeed really strange. Yeah.
So are the protests like having an effect on public opinion, do you think?
Yeah, that's interesting. What I saw on the news is that it does, and I saw also a poll about how much of the Dutch people are supporting this cause. And what I saw, I have some numbers over here. I saw, because what I already said, they started the protests even in 2019 already. So it's not like it is just came out of the blue, but it is now intensifying. So according to this poll, in October 2021, there were 38 people were supporting the farmers, and
38%.
38%, yeah, and 27% was neutral, and 32% was at that time was against the protest. And then in June 2022, so I think that was a little bit, not the start, but at least then it was intensifying. Then you saw that 45% was supporting the farmers, and 25% was neutral, and 26% was against it. And now in July, you see a decline in support. Now you see 39% is supporting it, and 24% is neutral, and 35% is opposing it. So what you, at least also according to mainstream media, you see a kind of a decline, and also that people say, okay, yeah, we know that you have a hard time, but we also have a hard time. At least that's then the way they bring it. Like, there are more people suffering, so you should not complain too much.
Is that part of the Dutch culture, you think, as well? This like get back to work, stop complaining.
Yeah, that's a good observation. I do think indeed we are really a working people. Yeah, true. Yeah, and what I also say, at least one of the comments that I read was that they are being bought out. So they say, okay, you get a lot of money for it. But yeah, that's of course the question if that's really a motivation for farmers after being, what I said earlier, a farmer for decades and having a long history on certain land. Yeah.
And how much do you think people in Holland kind of see the big picture of what's behind this?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm always asking myself about that. Is like, how big is the group that doesn't agree, or that at least is seeing through all of it? I'm not sure all of it, but at least says, okay, maybe there is more at stake here than just the things that I read in the news. I think that the group is growing. The group is definitely growing. You see more people like questioning things. But on the other hand, I'm not sure about percentages, but I do think that it is also not that big that it really could change the course at this point, I would say. So I think there is a right-wing member of parliament, and his name is Thierry Baudet. I'm not sure about that you heard about it. He's in the news once in a while, I think, with Fox News or so. Maybe his name was mentioned at a certain point. But he says, okay, he's not very optimistic, because what he says is because he's in parliament, he says, okay, you have a kind of, the discussion is within a certain narrative, he says, and that is with a lot of topics. So, for example, with nitrogen, the discussion is not about, is it really a problem or not? No, the narrative that is being discussed in the parliament, it is a problem, but are we going to cut down 10%, 20%, 30%? So what you see, what they do, that party is really trying to move the discussion in another direction. So they say, yeah, it is not the question how much are we going to cut down. It's more like, is it really needed, and is this really a problem? And this kind of things they try to do. And you see that they have a hard time to move the discussion in different direction. So that also tells something, of course, about how people are feeling about this kind of things.
I get the problem, I guess you've got is like the media is in general on board with the whole agenda of these kind of things. I mean, which we kind of lump together as the Great Reset and all of these things that, the World Economic Forum has been talking about the Great Reset and other people also. And these kind of policies seem to, advance that agenda from under one pretext or another. And I think you mentioned earlier that the Prime Minister is it the Prime Minister of Holland?
Yeah, it's the Prime Minister, yeah.
So what's his connection with World Economic Forum and these kind of agendas?
Yeah, he's really close with World Economic Forum, and not only he, but all the frontmen of the parties that are in the same cabinet are all visiting Davos at certain times. So they're all on the same boat, sort of saying, yeah.
So that's even the leader of the right-wing party is.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
So the Prime Minister is being is coming from that right-wing party. So.
Right. Wow.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that's really like, okay, what's happening here? And he had a bag from the World Economic Forum, and at a certain point he was even walking into Parliament with this bag of the World Economic Forum to make a statement. Like, okay, I'm not sure what the exact statement, of course, but at least it was a statement, that's for sure. And at a certain point, he was really questioned about it, so he didn't do it afterwards. But yeah. So they're really close.
Wow. I mean, these things in the 70s, 80s, there was kind of conspiracy theories about, that these kind of things were happening. But now it's not really a conspiracy theory anymore, because the guy's walking in with the bag, I mean, it's
so how clear can it get?
Not even hiding it anymore,
No, they're definitely not hiding it anymore. No.
But
But,
he feels like he had to hide it now. You're saying he doesn't carry it anymore. So apparently some.
Yeah, of course he's a politician, so he takes his chances. I would say.
But and if those kind of if people who are on board with that agenda control the media, then that controls a lot of people's perception of these issues, doesn't it? Which is the challenge.
Yeah, definitely, and that's what I really like about that Thierry Baudet and his party. It's called Forum for Democracy. Is that they really? It's not always easy because you see a lot of backlash on the things that they say because they are talking or trying to talk about subjects out of the narrative, and then it is very, how do you say it, contradictionary. And for example, what I said, I looked up some things that they try to change the narrative. Is that with migrants also you have on a European level you have discussion about it, and they try to form European laws around it that the individual countries need to abide with. And he also says, okay, the discussion is more about 10% migrants, 20% migrants, this kind of thing. So you say, yeah, if I go into that discussion, nothing will change. It will be a fraction that will change. So he says, okay, I think we did a bad job replacing Assad in Syria and starting that war. So that was really a bad thing to do. And then you really have the whole parliament. You can see it on the internet. Really like getting steamed and really attacking him and being a fascist. And really, they really get outrageous also in talk shows when this kind of things happen. And he says this kind of things. They're really out getting outrageous. And you really. And in the beginning, when I heard it, was also, this is very radical. But when you really think it through and also hear his story behind why he's doing this kind of things, it's really like, okay, but it does make sense also to do that. So yeah, it is how do you say it? Provoking, of course, but yeah.
Yeah, so I guess the what you got to do is really educate the people through other channels on the mainstream media, isn't it?
Yeah, true. And what you see, I think what you see happening, and probably that's all over the world, is that some people are really interested, and some people, and maybe the majority at this point still is not interested because they do their thing, they have their life. And now, of course, you now also see gas prices really rising also here in Europe. So people get affected, so they cannot get away with it anymore, looking the other direction. But that's actually what happened, I think, for decades, that they look away and they don't put too much interest into it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of like the people need to be woken up to what's happening and where things are going if they don't do something.
Yeah.
It's the challenge, isn't it? How do you wake people up, and how bad does things have to get before they finally decide that they've got to take a stand?
Yeah, and that also explains why indeed the farmers are really protesting, and you have now people that are maybe really looking further than their own horizon also are sympathetic with the farmers, that I really understand their reasoning. And indeed, then you have I don't know, but I think still it is a majority of the people that say, yeah, okay, they have a problem, and nitrogen. They believe the narrative from the media, so nitrogen is a problem. So yeah, they need to give in, and that's then probably where it ends for a lot of people, the discussion.
Yeah.
But we do have, maybe I didn't say it before, we do have a kind of sign with people that are with the farmers, and that's the Dutch farmers handkerchief. And what you do see, and not a lot, but you do see it, like truckers are also having it on a truck, this handkerchief, or people in the car. So once in a while, I also have it hanging outside my window, this handkerchief. So once in a while, you drive by with another person that has the handkerchief. You're like, hey, you're with the farmers. So, and I think that group is growing. So hopefully, I'm still optimistic. We get the kind of rolling momentum.
Yeah.
And I don't see that in the media either. But I also, in alternative media, you do see sometimes that also, it seems like in Italy, farmers are protesting. Germany, our farmers are protesting and are also joining kind of the Dutch farmers. And also in Spain, you had a protest with farmers. So hopefully this is just like with the truckers in Canada. Maybe it can get a little bit get a momentum, and people start to wake up.
Okay, well, that's a hopeful sign. I think we need to keep, like, pray that happens, pray that people wake up and wear our handkerchiefs.
I can send them over, Peter. No.
Okay. So do you have any final thoughts you wanted to share with us about what's happening and how we can make a difference?
Yeah, I think I do. I have some, what I also find very interesting, it's a little bit, maybe a small sidetrack, but we also have a Declaration of Independence in Holland. Actually, in the 16th century, we were a part of Spain. So it was a kind of royal marriage between a king or a queen. And so we were, in the end, we were connected together, Spain. And after a few generations, the Spanish king became really tyrannic. And at that point, they had a Declaration of Independence at a certain point after many years of trying to solve the differences. And I found it very inspiring to read it because it really gives the blood and the how do you say, the fire of the people. What's in the document. So if you please would allow me to read a small part of it, and maybe that gives the flame. And I think indeed, looking at the answer, we need to have that flame back again, like the fabric of the people and where they stand for.
Oh.
So let me get it. And actually, University of Wisconsin in Madison. Experts saying that Jefferson may have modeled the declaration after the 16th century the Dutch document. So that's also very interesting. So maybe there is a connection there.
No, I never heard about this before. This is very interesting.
It is, isn't it? Yeah.
Flame of freedom in Holland. Wow. Reignite that spirit of the, the people who wrote this declaration, and
Well, actually, also Saint Germain visited in his embodiment when he was the wonderment of Europe. Also visited Holland. So I think really we have a lot of freedom, of freedom spirit here in Holland. And it says, the first paragraph says, "It is known to everyone that a sovereign, as a servant of God, is supposed to protect his subjects from all injustice, nuisance, and violence, as a shepherd protects his sheep. The subjects are not created by God to be submissive to the monarch in everything he commands and to serve him as slaves. The monarch rules by the grace of his subjects and must rule over them with justice and reason, protecting and loving them as a father loves his children and as a shepherd protects his sheep with heart and soul. If a sovereign does not fulfill his duties, but instead of protecting his subjects, seeks to oppress them as slaves, then he is not a sovereign, but a tyrant. In that case, his subjects, after deliberation in the States General, may renounce him and elect another leader." And that's what I did at that time. And I'm not proclaiming we should start a revolution, but at least I think, we need to rise up.
Okay, on that note, thank you, Piet. Thank you for sharing this story. It's an inspiring story, and hopefully the flame will catch and people will rise up and say no to the Great Reset and reclaim their freedoms, which are given by God, as this says. So thank you very much, and we'll see you on our next SummitCast show.